Earlier, I called Luffy a freedom fighter, but I'm far from the first influencer to do so. Hasan Piker used those very same words to describe him, and he's thrown even more contentious labels at the series, arguing that One Piece is communist and Luffy is Antifa, which are pretty strong claims to make, especially about a kid's cartoon that started in the 90s. But that doesn't mean they're not worth considering. Luffy's very DNA, literally. Oda keeps a picture of Che Guevara hanging prominently in his studio, and he's based more than one character on his likeness and history, including Monkey D. Luffy's own father, Dragon, the leader of the Revolutionary Army. But he is a freedom fighter in the most literal sense of the term, that he will fight anyone who tramples on his or his friend's freedom.
This is a Politics of One Piece video. And it's actually part of the reason why I really like One Piece. Let's take a look.
From New York to Jakarta, Paris to Palestine, Rome to Kathmandu, One Piece is being adopted the world over as the official manga of protest and revolution. Which must be more than a little confusing to folks who mainly know Luffy as that one guy who was always standing next to Boruto's dad in Bleach from, you know, that one anime that's way too long to ever watch it. Meanwhile, those who have watched it are just thinking,
Sniper King, shoot down that flag.
Those pirates just declared war against the world government!
Yeah, sounds about right. I want to examine some of the political themes that have made One Piece and the Mugiwara flag such lightning rods for radical and revolutionary thought among Gen Z.
Why wouldn't you just enjoy the show and think too much about it? Brother, it's not even thinking too much about it. It's just... it's not an undertone. It's the tone. It's the theme. It's
top-down light action adventure.
What are you talking about? It's literally the whole thing. The entire story revolves around overthrowing corrupt tyrants. It's not subtle at all. It's about fighting against governments that are harming the people. I mean, this video is ironically going to explain all of that, but that is the whole point of One Piece. Why don't you just turn your fucking brain off, himbo? It's not even that. It's like, it's as prevalent as the colors are on the screen.
We should also probably address all the folks who will adamantly insist One Piece isn't political at all. So, yeah, they're just completely wrong, both in the broad everything is political sense that no work of art can fully expunge its own creator's biases and worldview, and the meme sense that it has many queer and racialized characters in it, but also in the more specific sense that Eiichiro Oda has a lot of very strong opinions regarding governments and social issues that he builds most of his story arcs around.
Yeah.
Drum Island is
yeah. I wonder what this anime is about that has like visibly queer characters and trans characters that aren't even like villains, okay? Or even if they are villains initially, they become like friends. All this stuff where one of the mysterious characters is like a revolutionary. One of the mysterious good characters is directly a revolutionary.
Explicitly about the evils of privatized and monopolized medicine. The entire East Blue saga is bookended with stories about different scales of police corruption. Skypiea is about colonialism and its ties to the romanticized age.
This is so funny. I verbatim, one by one, went through all of this when describing why One Piece was political on the Trash Taste podcast.
Exploration. Fishman Island deals with civil rights and the evils of racial supremacy. Alabasta and Dressrosa both
straight up, greatest opportunity and yet the weakest. I think Oda's weakest political POV was Fishman Island.
Examine from different angles how covert foreign actors can destabilize and subvert sovereign states. Water 7 is about basically the CIA doing that and leads directly into a vicious spoof of Japan's guilty until proven innocent court system. Wano explores the pros and cons of open borders with a little side of trans rights. Sabo's backstory is all about how elites divide and conquer through social stratification. Robin's backstory shows how history can be twisted and erased to control political narratives in the Smithsonian. The entire Summit War saga is about the corruption and politicization of justice itself. Long Ring Longland is about cheating scandals in the Laugh Olympics. It's a very political manga. And when you dig deeper to look at the underlying narrative connecting those arcs, you find revolutionary politics baked into One Piece and Luffy's very DNA. Literally, Oda keeps a picture of Che Guevara hanging prominently in his studio, and he's based more than one character on his likeness and history, including Monkey D. Luffy's own father, Dragon, the leader of the Revolutionary Army. Now, Luffy himself is not a revolutionary, not consciously anyway. His only political priority is the redistribution of meat. But he is a freedom fighter in the most literal sense of the term, that he will fight anyone who tramples on his or his friend's freedom, which naturally leads to him overthrowing a despot or two, since anyone who shares meat with him is his...
Like, the only counterexample that you can present here is basically that there have been many instances where he's like basically put a magnanimous monarch back into positions of power, right? And that's the only effective counterexample, like only effective counter narrative to the idea that this is like a socialist work or like a revolutionary work in general. And the thing that I would say in that regard is basically that, like, I think Oda is, like, I've thought about this quite a bit. Oda is very governance agnostic. Like, he just thinks that as long as the authority figure is good for the greater, as long as the authority figure, regardless of whether they're a monarch, a hereditary monarch, or anything, right? Democratically voted into power, as long as they are working for the greater good, then it's fine.
Friend for life. And for that, like many freedom fighters the world over, the dominant global hegemony has branded him a criminal and a terrorist. That hegemony...
Isn't that a liberal viewpoint? The system is fine, it's just the people are wrong? No, that's not a liberal viewpoint. Liberals are... The entire point of liberalism is anti-monarchy, anti-feudalism. No, if that was the case, liberals would love China, for example. They'd be like, well, the system seemingly works for the Chinese people, even though they have a one-party form of governance. Liberals would not shit on it if that was the case. That's the one redeemable quality of liberalism, is that it's anti-monarchy.
The world government isn't a direct allegory for any specific empire, but there are some clear historical parallels. Aesthetically, it borrows a lot from Age of Sail Britain, but the material conditions are a little more modern. A vast network of international extortion that drains the resources of subordinate states in exchange for vague promises of protection, while treating the citizens of unallied states as effectively subhuman, killing them for resources or just for the hell of it.
Fucking NATO, our billionaires being the celestial dragons, yeah.
Nation literally built on top of a racialized underclass whose slavery was made illegal several years ago on paper, but is still carried out in practice through loopholes in the prison system, ruled by an elite class of lazy, malignant Nepo babies who are treated like gods basically just for existing, and if you so much as think about hurting one of them, they will bring the full weight of the state down on your head faster than you can blink. Though, of course, that last point applies to pretty much every empire, and that is the real point of the world government. The shape of and justifications for authoritarian regimes change from country to country and era to era, but the villainy masquerading as justice is an eternal constant. Every Marine uses their own definition of justice to justify their actions, villainous or otherwise. Fujitora, the samurai admiral, practices humane justice, with an emphasis on protecting innocents over attacking criminals. A noble ideal, to be sure, but one that's immediately compromised by the company that he...
That's my favorite fucking part of One Piece. that there are good cops and bad cops, but ultimately the system requires you to do evil. Okay? That's one of the best, most adult themes in this otherwise very childish looking work, is that while there are people who are kind-hearted or have honest intention, ultimately they're still doing the bidding, because policing as an institution is designed around defending the status quo and defending the ruling class.
The determined justice of Ryokugyu, the cop admiral who seeks to achieve justice by violently subjugating everyone he personally deems to be undeserving of it, which is pretty much anyone who refuses to submit to the authority of his gods, the celestial dragons. Such people he doesn't even see as human anymore. Standing between those two extremes
you have no human rights.
is Admiral Kizaru, a fundamentally fickle man whose ideal of justice is unclear. He's a laid-back sort of guy, some might say too laid-back, inquisitive and open, if absent-minded, which makes him a fast friend to Dr. Vegapunk, but he's not particularly decisive, and rather than sorting out the complexities of justice for himself, he'd much prefer to be under orders, which he follows with ruthless efficiency, free of the responsibility of actually passing judgment himself. Though after the events at Egghead, he may no longer...
I didn't see anything. Remember, I only saw half of Egghead. I stopped watching after I stopped watching specifically because I wanted to bank episodes. So I have not. Is it fine to unpause here?
It's really no wonder that he ends up siding with the black...
Wait, no, I saw this. I know this. Okay, I got scared. I know this. I know he sides with Blackbeard. I know that.
Blackbeard pirates after leaving, despite his kind nature. After all, as Luffy's foil, Teach is the ultimate avatar of selfish, individualistic freedom, and after a lifetime spent sacrificing his own freedom for justice, yet still being denied his final promotion by the Navy, it's only natural that Kuzan would swing all the way in the other direction. Everything that opposes the world government is absolutely evil, and anything the world government does to stop it is absolutely good. Even if that means cutting down innocent civilians just to get a pirate, or testing top secret experimental weapons on children, or nuking an entire island just to uphold the official narrative. And with that being their official party line, you can probably imagine what the Marines are like as an organization, especially under Sakazuki, worse than basically all of the criminals that they're actually capable of stopping. Besides a few notable deserters, the only good Marines are the ones who've crafted their own personal code of moral justice, like Kobe, Smoker, Tashigi, and Garp. But even Garp...
Oh! I heard that there is spoilers, hella spoilers here. Hold on, I'm gonna skip a little bit ahead. I'm gonna close my eyes and skip. Hopefully it'll be fine.
Do you
think I skipped enough? Do you think I skipped far enough? You have to eat the spoilers. We do it all the time. This is such a good video. Eat the spoilers or don't want.
Our absolutist potential ally alienating all that passion can be twisted to unjust ends. One Piece frequently pits the forces of freedom and justice against each other. It's the most persistent conflict in the entire series, present from the moment that Luffy met Kobe. And that conflict is a dialectic one, intended to produce a synthesis between the extremes of the Marines and pirates, between those who claim to uphold justice while protecting the world's greatest and richest criminals from
fucking nailing it. Jesus Christ, I gotta pee.
And those who seize freedom for themselves at the expense of the weakest and poorest. A truly universal brand of justice that none are allowed to stand above, whose purpose is to protect instead of restrict freedom. Because you cannot have true freedom unless all who would trample on it are brought brought to justice. And until all men are free, justice can never be truly absolute. Earlier, I called Luffy a freedom fighter, but I'm far from the first influencer to do so. Hasan used those very same words to describe him, and he's thrown even more contentious labels at the series, arguing that One Piece is communist and Luffy is Antifa, which are pretty strong claims to make, especially about a kid's cartoon that started in the 90s. But that doesn't mean they're not worth considering. So, is there anything in the text that backs them up? Well, One Piece does portray many of its villains, from Eneru with his surveillance state to the world government with its everything, through explicit, direct parallels to real fascist regimes. And Luffy does punch a whole lot of ethno-fascists and theo-fascists and crypto-fascists and croco-fascists right in their stupid fascist faces. But, as I've already said, that's not necessarily out of a committed ideological opposition to fascism itself, so much as the fact that fascists keep getting in the way of him and his friends' dreams and or meat. Luffy only ends up punching so many of these pieces of shit because he's a naturally good person. He doesn't need to be told that they're enemies of freedom. He can simply see it for himself from their heinously evil words.
I also think Luffy is the way that he is because he's almost like gum-like, if that makes sense, where everything bounces off of him, where he is just, he's not trying. Like, he's just good. He's not trying. He doesn't have like any sort of ideological commitment. And I think that's by design. He's basically Rubber Man. He is just gum. That's what it is. Like, there is a reason why all of the other characters, even down to Zoro and all the other characters, both on the villain side, both on the good guy side, they all have like very clear agendas. They have very clear goals. They have like some kind of like logical through line, as opposed to, I would say he's a cartoon, but yes, good one. As opposed to Luffy, who's just kind of there.
I really don't think that he'd claim that label, even though he frequently does anti-fascism. His dad definitely would, though.
Yeah.
And speaking of Shay, as for the communism thing, on a surface reading, that does immediately seem a little silly. I mean, Nami, one of the core...
So you're disagreeing with your earlier statements? No, I think Luffy is in its purest form anti-fascist output. I said Oda is a communist, or as a joke, I said One Piece is a communist work. But as far as like what Luffy does, yes, he's not like he's not, at least so far, he hasn't been like, I have a commitment to engage in anti-fascist actions. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. He just does it.
OG Straw Hat trio with us from the very first arc, just fucking loves money and treasure. It's kind of her whole thing. It's just so shiny, and having it makes her so happy, and it's so useless to her when it really counts.
Nami's practicing socialism with Chinese characteristics.
Saves up her entire life to buy her freedom from Arlong, but when she finally has enough, he just takes it from her and forces her back under his fishy thumb. Because that's how oppressors operate. You can't stop them from oppressing you by playing their game by their rules with their pieces. You have to flip the board. While she never loses the obsession with money that many people who grow up in crippling debt develop, the thing that actually saves Nami is the friends she made along the way.
This is the funniest fucking read. Luffy is not Forrest Gump. Lol. Fuck whoever said that. Luffy is insanely emotionally intelligent and wise. He isn't low IQ. He just has massive ADHD and learning disabilities, people. God, amazing. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Doing a whole bunch of violence on her behalf until the oppression stops. Something they do for a lot of their friends all around the world, and it always works. One Piece clearly argues that violent revolution is sometimes, often necessary to effect real change, but it's also careful to caution that
And also, the structures are inherently violent. Like the forms of oppression that governments take are also inherently violent. And it leads to a lot of pain and a lot of torment for regular people. The enslaved masses or an underclass of fishmen.
Revolutions which aim to subjugate out of hatred for the oppressor rather than liberate out of love for the oppressed will ultimately reproduce many of the problems they seek to solve. And since Luffy's explicit goal is to become the freest man alive,
Being king of the pirates is about being more free than anyone.
you could take that as One Piece arguing that those specific principles of social organization and resource distribution are designed to maximize the freedom of the people living by them. But you could also make the case that that's a selective reading of the text, since Luffy has fought on the side of straight-up monarchists about nearly as often as he's joined up with revolutions. And more than once, he's stopped a full-on populist uprising in its tracks on behalf of an embattled king. Both of those times were to stop fascists who'd either manufactured or co-opted the movement, but Luffy still made friends with both of those kings.
Yeah, Luffy says no to color revolutions, dude. Oh my god. Luffy is anti-color revolution. Luffy is a tanky. Luffy is a tanky. He said the Hungarian counter-revolution must stop. Roll the tanks. See, not agenda piece, not agenda piece. I'm not reading through the lines. I'm reading the lines, okay?
So One Piece isn't really advocating for any one specific form of society so much as the idea that groups of people should be able to determine what their society looks like for themselves without being coerced or manipulated into undermining their own culture, traditions, and basic human needs. What really matters is whether a society has good leaders.
Can you counter his argument because he's saying that it's silly to call One Piece being a communist? What do you mean? He literally, first of all, the endpoint of communism is not at odds with what he's describing. Every part of this video is explaining in great detail that if Luffy's final goal is to achieve full freedom, then ultimately it is technically communist. He looks at each individual state and analyzes the material conditions of each individual state and decides that for each individual state, there's a different way. Okay? There's a different way to go about it where he's like saying, no, you can have your own version of a bourgeois dictatorship, but the methods of achieving said bourgeois dictatorship are dictated by the material conditions of each unique and individual state. Because like for some, he's saying, you know, we gotta stop a color revolution led by the CIA. In others, he's saying that there is a magnanimous dictator that is not democratically assigned, but abides by the democratic wishes of the population.
A king, a president, a pirate lord, or a god, good leaders in One Piece always put the needs of their people above their own, while evil ones use their people to serve their own ambitions or needs or just plain old selfish wants.
I mean, this one was like so directly rail against like railing against the war economy, the military industrial complex, the enslavement of an indigenous peoples, in an effort to improve profit margins. I mean, it's just it was so insanely. It was so insanely on the nose. Yeah, drug trafficking, hunger and pollution, climate change. It had it all.
We're supposed to be leaving a better world for our children, after all. So if it's not better, if you're dealing with cruelty, with neglect, with a ruling class that wastes the people's money on frivolous, selfish bullshit, maybe it's time to get out there and raise your flag. I'm Jeff Thu, professional freedom keyboard warrior.
That was fire, bro. God damn, that was good. Fuck, dude. That was good as fuck. Great video. Holy shit. All right, that earned my subscription for sure. After all these years, I've realized Luffy was the original kindness as punk rock character all along. I think the best part about this, though, while this is correct, I think the best part about it is that Luffy is so aloof that it makes the uninitiated not even think he's like standing for something or being annoying about it or moralizing his position in any capacity. Whereas even Superman is like obviously demonstrating basic competence and basic brain capacity, so much so that like the watchers can still look at that and go, oh yeah, this guy knows what he's doing. He knows what he's up to. That's part of the reason why I was saying that that Luffy is the way that he is, and it's perfect to, you know, teach people that this is good behavior. If your goal in your work of art is to show someone as like absolute good, you don't always have to match them up against evil enemies and then have them relitigate their position over and over and over again. Oda just kind of shows you that he is a kind individual and is aloof and is just doing the right thing. So I think it makes it so that a lot of people are more charitable to him, even those who I guess would be right wing, even those who I guess would consider themselves to have like the diametrical opposite politics in the real world of the politics that One Piece demonstrates.